After years of being part of a clinical research team and working with some of these medicines and therapy, this is the best way we've come up with to explain what psychedelic medications do and why they are so effective at treating mental health conditions. So you might be familiar with Freud's idea that the human mind is like an iceberg. We're going to build upon that. We're going to use that same metaphor and we're going to update it with some modern neuroscience. But don't worry, this is not going to be an overly technical explanation. We want it to make intuitive sense to you by the end of the video, right? So that's our goal. So we are going to start here with the part of the iceberg above the surface of the water. It represents your the part of your mind that you can see and that you think of as being you, right? So it's your conscious mind. It's rational. It's verbal. It's your conscious thoughts, beliefs, and values. Abstract knowledge lives here. So if I were to ask you about something you read in a book, like how fast does light travel, that type of information lives up here, right? So cognitive processing and your executive decision-making capacity lives here, right? That's where this takes place. So if I asked you what is 18 plus 30, right? So this is the part of your brain that's responsible for that kind of processing. Language lives here, right? Your ability to take an experience and symbolically represent that experience by using words or writing happens here. And this is mostly unique to being human, right? So for the most part, animals can't do this. They just have an experience. They don't have the ability to convert that experience into an abstract story that they can then communicate, right? So we also make meaning out of our experiences, right? So something happens to us and we make it mean something, like I'm a good person, or that happened to me and it means X, Y, and Z about me or other people or the world, right? So the point here is that this part of our mind is constantly spinning stories and making things mean something. And again, this part of the mind and its abilities are mostly unique to being human, right? So other animals don't have higher order cognitive thinking capacity. They don't make meaning of their experience. So I once had a dog who became a three-legged dog at one point in her life. And after she recovered from the surgery, she had no sense that she was wronged or that life was unfair or that she was unloved because of her three-leggedness. Do you see what I mean? She didn't have the ability to make her three-leggedness mean something because she just didn't have that part of her brain. Whereas we struggle with all of those things, right? Because that's how our minds work. This is not to say that my dog didn't have a trauma reaction to the surgery. She absolutely did, because trauma, PTSD take place below that cognitive level. They take place below that meaning-making level. Trauma happens below that tip of the iceberg part of your mind that we're talking about right now. But I'm not going to go into that just in this video because we've dedicated an entirely different video to that, which we'll point you to at the end of this one, okay? So I said this earlier, but I'll say it again because it bears repeating. This is the part of you that you identify as being you, right? So you think that you are your thoughts, your values, your beliefs. We think we are our story. We try and get a sense of meaning and purpose. Your sense of I comes out of this part, right? So this is your everyday normal mind or your ordinary state of consciousness. And it's a delusion. Or I should say the perspective that this is all of you is a delusion, right? So thinking that your sense of self and meaning that comes from this part of your mind is all of who you are, and if you could just get your thoughts in order, everything would be fine, is just not accurate, right? But unfortunately, the type of psychology that dominates in the US thinks this is the case, and it is so obviously not. Right? So the dominant modality here is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or talk therapy in general, right? So have you ever heard that expression, change your thoughts, change your life? Well, that is basically the motto of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's the motto of most talk therapy and certainly of most self-help advice books, right? And it's based on the assumption that you can heal and control life from the thought-based center of your brain. The thing is that the human mind doesn't work this way. You don't work this way. Healing is not based on control and censorship from one part of your mind over everything else. Working up here just does not create lasting psychological change. We don't heal patterns like addiction from this place, right? So we might learn to manage it or control it or limit the destructiveness of it, but we don't heal that. We don't heal what created it in the first place, right? You don't heal PTSD, trauma, anxiety, or depression from up here. We just learn better coping and management strategies. So there's a sense in mental health that symptom management is the best that we can do. And if it is, then great, let's take it, right? But we can do much better than that. And that is what we're seeing in the psychedelic research that's been coming out. And this is all because this part of your mind that we've been talking about, the tip of the iceberg, really is just that. It's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to who you are. This part of us showed up about 200,000 years ago. It's the new kid on the block in evolutionary terms, okay? What we've been ignoring is this giant part down here that's hidden from our awareness. It's your subconscious mind. And just like the iceberg, where the hidden part below the water is far larger than the visible part above the water, your subconscious mind is invisible to you, and it holds the vast majority of the programming for who you are and how you operate in the world. Let's see, it's a mammalian core that's been in development for 275 million years, right? So just get that. The tip of the iceberg, your conscious, rational thinking capacity showed up 200,000 years ago. Now, and compared to your subconscious mind that's been in development for 275 million years. So which part do you think has more impact, more control over your life, your mood, and your behavior, right? I think it's pretty obvious here. The subconscious is the invisible, non-conscious foundation upon which everything else is built, right? It's so large and foundational that your thoughts, your sense of meaning, your personality is built upon it. Right, so let's keep going into it because it's such an important part of you, and it has everything to do with how and where psychedelics go to work. Your subconscious holds the parts of your mind that are nonverbal, non-rational, non-linear. It has a lot to do with concrete sensations, raw emotions, and direct experience, and a primal sense of self, a primal sense of meaning lives here too, right? So it holds the memories of events in your life that took place before you could speak. So they are nonverbal memories, right? So it holds a sense of who you are and a sense of the world that got formed very early on. Have you ever heard that idea that most of who you are was formed before the age of 3? It's true, right? Your fundamental relationship patterning, your self-relationship, whether you feel yourself to be a good person or if you're unworthy or unlovable, that nonverbal programming lives here. Your sense of the world around you, whether it's a nurturing place that will meet your needs or if it's harsh, uncaring, empty, and lacking in love, right? So that sense formed pre-verbally and lives down here. Right? And I'm not talking about the sense of yourself that you are consciously aware of. I'm talking about what you believe in your heart of hearts that may be even hidden from your conscious mind. Okay? Your subconscious holds dissociated memories, which are events or things that were so scary or overwhelming to you that your mind is protecting you by keeping these memories hidden. Right? So most people in the MDMA trials, for example, are able to pull up a lot of details of memories that were not even available to their conscious minds. They had no idea that they even had these experiences, right? So these dissociated and nonverbal memories are, however, deeply influencing you, even if you didn't know about them or have any conscious recollection of them, right? So these experiences held in your subconscious are what actually generates your sense of I and your sense of meaning or lack of meaning about the world, okay? Let's see, your subconscious is made up of the more primitive parts of your biology, like your autonomic nervous system, your brainstem, your limbic system. This is where fear, anger, anxiety, panic, rage, depression, hopelessness that's where these experiences get generated. They are emotional experiences that are fundamentally nervous system responses that get created below the level of your conscious mind. To a large extent, they are responses to real or perceived danger or threats in your environment. Now, you are probably used to thinking that your thoughts create anger, upset, or depression. In our experience, it's the exact opposite, where your nervous system is triggered by current events or memories, and this triggers your nervous system, then generates anger, upset, or depression. And then your mind kicks in after the fact and creates thoughts and a conscious impression of the world to match how you feel, right? So it's like you feel a certain way based on what your nervous system is creating, and then the tip of the iceberg part of your brain looks around and finds a reason why you feel the way that you do, right? So remember, that is its job. It comes up with explanations. It comes up with a story or meaning for why things are the way that they are, right? And because your subconscious reactions are invisible to you, your conscious mind just makes up stories about what is causing your upset. So have you ever been in a relationship where your partner gets disproportionately upset over something small like burnt toast, or some strange little detail, and you have a fight about it like it's really about the burnt toast? You know what I'm talking about, right? So, and of course, it's never about the burnt toast, right? The burnt toast just represents or is pointing to something much deeper that's going on, right? So that's what I'm talking about here, right? Your conscious mind just fixates on something it can see, like your thoughts or burnt toast, versus what's actually going on that it cannot see, right? So it's a wild goose chase. It's a bone that your mind just keeps running after, and the thing is that you're never going to catch the bone, right? You're never going to catch the thought that's making you depressed or anxious, because depression and anxiety get generated from a much deeper place inside of you. Okay. The subconscious is the repository of your life experiences, right? So if you had a stable, secure, loving childhood and family, that programming lives down here as well, right? And by the way, if that's true for you, congratulations. That is a huge advantage in our world. You got perhaps the best gift that your parents could give you, and it shows up in the form of a stable, non-reactive, relational, smooth functioning system, smooth functioning nervous system, right? So when life throws you a curveball, you can take a couple of deep breaths and your system calms down by itself. And compare that to somebody who didn't get, that doesn't have that stable childhood gift in their system. When life throws them a curveball, they create drama, they blow up, they get angry or anxious or move into hopelessness or depression, or they have to go into some kind of addictive or destructive pattern to cope. So if you didn't get that stable childhood programming from your family, and many of us didn't, don't worry. You are not cursed to always enact your programming that you did get, right? So the really good news here is that there are profound healing impulses and mechanisms that live in your subconscious mind. It's full of healing capacities that the conscious mind just doesn't have access to. And this is what we're seeing emerge in the psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy research. It's not your conscious mind that's processing here. It's not your conscious mind that's doing the heavy lifting in these sessions. It's your subconscious mind that emerges with a great deal of healing capacity and intelligence. Okay? So I'm going to give you a way to relate to what these psychedelic psychotherapy sessions are like from your own life, right? So think about what happens every night when you fall asleep and dream, right? So your mind leaves its ordinary state of consciousness and enters a non-ordinary state of dreaming, that it's not rational, it's not based on any ordinary sense of time, space, or reality. But when you're in a dream, right, when you're in dreamland, which is to say when you're in your subconscious mind, the emotions, the joys, the fears, the things that you see and feel in your dreams make sense to you. right? Or I should say your dreams have their own internal logic. They feel right to you to be seeing and interacting with your dreams in this way. Your mind is processing there. You're working things out through your dreams. And in fact, it's healthy and necessary for us to go into this non-ordinary state of consciousness. We're built to do it naturally. We go there on a regular basis, right? So having said that about non-ordinary states of consciousness that we go to while we dream, let's shift over and focus on psychedelic medicines that are either available now or that are in the FDA approval pipeline, like ketamine and cannabis, which are here now, right? And then MDMA and psilocybin, which will be here soon enough, relatively speaking, right? Because these medicines do the exact same thing as your dreams do, but in a much more powerful way, right? So these medicines also create a non-ordinary state of consciousness, which allows you to enter into your subconscious mind, right? So, in fact, we think that it's the key element that these medications, as well as all other psychedelics, have in common, right? They all have their own unique biochemical profile. They all have their own distinct effect that they create, but fundamentally, at their core, all psychedelics cause you to enter into a temporary, non-ordinary state, dream state, right? So while you're awake. So while you're in this state, you can see and alter your own subconscious programming. And it's an incredible therapeutic opportunity that far exceeds any tinkering that we can accomplish just by working with your conscious mind. And again, this is because your conscious mind doesn't hold your core programming, right? Remember, it's just the tip of the iceberg, okay? So we find that these medicines cause a great deal of what was hidden in your subconscious, like hidden events and dissociated or nonverbal memories, a hidden sense of self and meaning about the goodness or the badness of the world. It causes these things to rise up and be seen and engaged with and healed if necessary. Right, so this is why we call these expressive medicines. They cause the subconscious to become expressed. And of course, the other major benefit is that you can have an external helper, right, a specially trained therapist, enter into that space with you and serve as an ally. So I would say that if you're going to engage and alter your core programming in this way, you do want that kind of guidance, right? You want somebody there who understands what's going on, what's coming up for you, and how to interact with you while you're in that space, while you're in that altered reality, right? You want somebody who understands human development and the psychological needs that will be showing up. You want somebody who can help create corrective emotional experiences and who can work with the intense projections and transference and intense emotionality that may live down there, right? So in other words, to summarize, you really don't want to be doing this level of work by yourself, and certainly not in a recreational, random setting, right? Setting have a lot to do with this. This is why we're seeing such great results with psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy across the board, from the MDMA trials to the psilocybin research at Johns Hopkins to the research on ketamine for depression and PTSD and addiction, right? So, but let me be clear on what is not happening here, right? So what is not happening is a magic pill that will solve all of your problems without real and meaningful engagement by you and your therapist. What is not happening here is the standard psychiatry model where you take a pill and your symptoms become suppressed, right? This is not numbing things down. What these medicines are doing is that they are all tapping into the innate healing tendencies that live within you, right? Within your subconscious mind and body. They are temporarily disrupting the control and censorship that your conscious mind has over the rest of you, and thereby allowing your subconscious healing impulses to emerge and turn on, right? These medicines allow you to spend time in your subconscious with support and guidance. We can enter into and work with your subconscious in ways we just can't do through regular dreaming or come close to doing with therapy when it's being run through your ordinary conscious mind, right? So I'm hoping the picture is becoming clear here, right? So we are saying that the tip of the iceberg part of your mind is massively overemphasized in our modern Western society to your detriment. So look, the tip of the iceberg is brilliant. It's incredible. It's uniquely human. It's responsible for modern medicine, for skyscrapers, for getting us to the moon. But you are so much more than that, right? So this part of your brain was never meant to process the things that your subconscious mind was meant to handle, like depression and anxiety and trauma. It was never meant to be the source of your connection to the world. Your connection to spirituality, right? So we are trying to derive our sense of meaning and purpose for our lives from this limited, small ego, and it's not very good at generating meaning, right? So our experience is that meaning is something that naturally, organically emerges when you contact yourself, right? So meaning doesn't have to be created. It's already there. It's waiting for you inside a much larger you. Right? So your conscious, rational, thought-based mind and the sense of control that you get from it, we're not saying it's bad. Again, it's just way overemphasized, and we're ignoring the extraordinary gifts, the sense of connection, healing capacities, organic sense of I and meaning that arise through reclaiming your subconscious self, right? So it holds a lot. Right? This part below the surface of the water, it holds a lot. So on the mental health side, the psychology that focuses on strengthening your rational, thought-based, conscious control hasn't worked very well. And in fact, we think it's part of the problem. Right? So we venerate this part of the mind like it's the only way to deal with mental health conditions. And I think we're clearly seeing from the research that it's not. Right? So, in fact, the therapies that are designed to support and even reinforce your ordinary states of consciousness are not the same therapies that you want when you're operating down here in your subconscious, right? So, in other words, cognitive behavioral therapy and talk therapy are often working in the exact opposite direction psychedelic medicines want to go, right? So when we're down here, we want therapies that are less verbal and more feeling-based and more body-based, more experience-based. We want therapies that actually embrace the non-rational, the non-verbal, the non-linear, non-ordinary reality that is operating down here, right? So this is all to say, and this is a key point, we want a non-ordinary state psychotherapy to work with non-ordinary states of consciousness, right? It only makes sense that those two fit well together, right? So I strongly believe this is the future of psychotherapy, where we are less focused on changing your thoughts and more interested in touching into the personal reality that you have stored inside of you, touching into your core programming, right? So in wrapping up, I'm going to briefly review some of the data that's coming out of the clinical trials on psychedelic medicines, right? So the first one that we'll touch into is the MAP-sponsored MDMA study, assisted psychotherapy research, right? So we found that a full 67% of participants no longer met the criteria for PTSD after just 3 full dose sessions of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy, right? So this measure was taken a year after the last treatment. I was a sub-investigator in one of these clinical trials, and I can tell you that the participants were not cherry-picked, right? They had treatment resistance, which means other standard psychotherapy or medication treatments had failed them, right? So this would typically be the type of client who would be in standard therapy for 15 or 20 years without making much improvement. And they would probably be on a cocktail of psychiatric medications with all the side effects that entails potentially for the rest of their lives, right? So switching gears to psilocybin, which is the psychedelic compound in magic mushrooms, researchers at Johns Hopkins have been looking at this substance, have been researching it for the last 15 years, right? And they found that psilocybin reliably created mystical experiences for most people, right? That they found that 80% of their participants reported that their single psilocybin session in the lab was among the top 5 most meaningful and spiritually significant experiences of their life. Now, in another study that was run out of Hopkins, it was a double-blind study of cancer patients who were facing a life-threatening illness and therefore suffered from clinical depression and anxiety as a result. 92% of these people showed a significant reduction in their depressed mood and their anxiety symptoms 5 weeks after a single dose. Now, take that in for a moment. 92%. That number is ridiculous. We never see anything like that in terms of effectiveness in the world of mental health, right? So they also found that 70% of the participants had achieved remission, meaning that their anxiety and depression scores weren't any different than the normal range 6 months later, right? So, and again, we're talking about a single exposure to psilocybin in a controlled therapeutic setting, right? So, and then finally, there are the many studies focusing on the anesthetic drug ketamine for depression and PTSD and addiction, right? So this is a legally available drug that is used in hospital emergency rooms for children. It's used on the battlefield because of how safe it is, right? So, but something that's not widely talked about when it comes to ketamine is that it creates a solid psychedelic experience at low dose at low doses, which is what's used to treat depression, right? So we work with this drug in combination with psychotherapy at Innate Path, but unfortunately most of the treatment centers that provide ketamine treatment don't offer psychotherapy with it, right? So the standard approach, the standard protocol is to hook people up to a ketamine infusion and leave them alone in a darkened room for about 40 minutes without any therapeutic interaction for the entire time, right? So the great news is that even this has proven to be effective. However, from our clinical experience, there is a profound therapeutic opportunity that's being missed here, which is why we are collecting outcome data from all of our patients to add to the literature on ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, right? So the 2 studies that I find most interesting here involve alcoholism and heroin addiction. Researchers found that in a double-blind study comparing ketamine-assisted psychotherapy to the standard treatment for alcoholism, a full 65.8% of the ketamine psychotherapy group were abstinent at the 1-year mark, compared to just 24% of the standard treatment group, right? So that is a 270% improvement compared to standard treatment. Now, if we look at ketamine-assisted psychotherapy for heroin, we see that the ketamine psychotherapy group had a 50% abstinence rate at the end of 1 year, compared to just 20% for the standard treatment group, right? So these are just some sample, this is just some sample data that's starting to pour in as more and more research institutions start looking at these medicines. And again, to be clear, what is being tested here in these studies and what's leading to these results is not the drug. It's the drug plus psychotherapy, right? It's a human interaction plus, it's a drug plus a human interaction that's creating these results. These medicines are tapping into your innate intelligence, your innate healing capacities. The drug is a catalyzer of organic healing tendencies that you already have within you, which is why the setting, the context in which you take them is crucially important, right? So this is why, based on everything that we've touched on in this video, this is why we think that psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy and focusing on the subconscious mind with appropriate psychotherapy, the non-ordinary state psychotherapy that we've been describing, is the future of mental health, right? So there's no reason to settle for symptom management when we can address the root cause of what's happening here. There's no reason for a crutch for your broken leg when you have the capacity to heal your broken leg, right? That I think we're going to just opt for that option. So that's it, right? I hope you found this useful. I in no way am suggesting unwise or illegal drug use. In fact, just the opposite, right? There are legal, very helpful, safe, therapeutic pathways that you can be guided through to get the best results possible when using these medicines and psychotherapy, okay? So thank you for your time and take care.